Hi, Mickey.
Hey, Bob.
How you doing? Hey, that's a picture of, oh, that's like Joe Biden with my hair.
No,
My hair? Want to
it's
see my hair? No.
not quite. You have Lyndon Johnson here.
Look, check this out. Check this out. That's hair. Look at that.
Okay.
Hair.
But it's not a mullet. This is a mullet.
It's kind of a mullet. I could do
No,
a mullet.
because your hair
You
is
think I
long
can't do
in
a
front.
mullet?
It's just combed back.
All right.
Mullet,
So, he's got an actual mullet. So you do. Oh, yeah. Well,
This
he's got
is
implants on top, right? Or he has to do a mullet.
This photo has to be fake. Joe Biden, I don't think ever had a
No.
mullet that's this bad.
No.
But it's a metaphor, Bob. Or
Because
perhaps,
he's feeling young again after that State of the Union address. No.
But the State of the Union address was a mullet strategy, old style New Dealism in the front, and then the progressives go wild in the back, where the woke progressives where nobody's paying any attention. So that's his administration. It presents this benign face. It's very appealing. It was a very effective speech, I thought. He taxes millionaires. He has this program to help these people. He's bringing jobs back. Most importantly, it's all very New Deal-y. It's not very Clintonian. People have pointed out it sort of bypasses the Clinton era, goes right back to Hubert Humphrey, and that all seems good old Joe, Union man. And then, meanwhile, at the lower levels of the administration, they're doing things like there was one was in the news yesterday, requiring that every town in America have a plan for inclusive housing to bring equity to housing, and that's a big deal. It's not a New Deal thing; it's a new woke thing, and and Biden doesn't mention it. Okay, the border, big problem. Not a New Deal plan to let in millions of migrants. Quite the contrary. The New Deal happened during an era of immigration restriction, and yet he gives it like one paragraph. So he doesn't mention any of the non-appealing things. They're partying in the back. Isn't that a brilliant metaphor, Bob?
Well, I was going to ask, did you come up with that metaphor?
Gee, yeah, I did.
That was false humility, I gather. In your
it was my attempt at false humility.
I would recommend real humility in the case of that metaphor. But listen, whatever works for you, whatever gets this podcast off to a rocking start, and that sure did it.
It's getting hits on Elon Musk's Twitter.
Is it?
Unlike
you
Elon
laid
Musk.
out the metaphor on Twitter. How long a thread was that?
It was just a post. I had a long thread, but it was attacking Jonathan Chase.
Can you do long individual posts yet on Twitter?
I tried. No, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Supposedly blue checks can write like 400 characters or something. I don't know.
Oh, blue checks like you.
Right. Well, Bob, all these people.
Nouveau Blue, we call you.
Sorry?
Nouveau Blue, we call you.
Yes.
That's actually blue. Good. That's actually good. With all due respect, your mullet metaphor, I would say calling people who pay for the blue checks Nouveau Blue is arguably as good as your mullet metaphor, and it might have a longer shelf life.
Is it better than Parva Blue?
Well, I didn't even get that. That's how
Parvenu is.
Oh, yeah, it's better than that.
Okay.
Nouveau Blue.
So anyway, we have a lot to talk about, including the State of the Union.
On the State of the Union, just quickly, I didn't watch it because I knew you would, and save me the time.
I only had to do it because Ann Coulter sentenced me to blogging the State of the Union for using the word nothing burger in our last podcast.
Yeah, that has a shorter shelf life than we've assumed, I think.
It's a horrible word. It's a horrible bullshit,
it's a bad
trendy word. So I have to watch the State of the Union. I'm glad I did.
I didn't, but he got rave reviews. I can't tell if they're overdone. People are claiming that he not only delivered the speech crisply, which, with some presidents you would take for granted, and stayed awake for the whole thing, but actually handled hecklers with ease and grace and jiu-jitsu moves and
the
stuff.
speech itself was the standard fumbling, mispronounced, garbled syntax.
Oh, was it?
Thing you expect. Yeah, but we're used to that now. He was all there, and he was heckled. It was like British question time. Everybody was yelling at him.
I think that's what it's evolving into is prime minister's questions.
It's a good thing, I think. And because he had to be agile, and he was agile enough, and he did this very clever thing, which is, he said, "You want to cut Social Security?" And they said, "No, we don't. You're lying." He said, "Okay."
Well, one person called him a liar.
That's settled now. But they all yelled at him, presumably saying that was misstating their position. They said, "Okay, you don't want to cut Social Security, so that's settled. We have a deal there." And that was.
But couldn't you get that deal anyway? I mean, that wasn't like really backing them into a corner meaningfully, right? Or was it?
Oh, I think he trapped them into saying that they don't want to cut Social Security. Yeah, okay. I mean, they're going to find a way around it. But the whole thing could be a disaster for the Democrats because it totally revived Biden's hopes.
That's what worries me.
They're going to be stuck with him as the nominee, and B, it's sort of, if you believe this interchange, it sort of took Social Security off the table. So if he gets the Republicans to agree not to cut Social Security, how do the Democrats then campaign with a scare campaign about Social Security? I think they'll find a way to do it, but it lacks resonance now that he's neutralized the issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm concerned. I mean, would you say that because of this State of the Union address, the nomination is now his for the taking?
No, that's a little exaggeration, but it certainly puts him in a strong position and makes people think twice about challenging him. Plus, I have a bit of punditry, Bob.
Oh, good.
The problem is that it's not clear who would challenge him, or if
I got a plan.
If he disappeared from the scene, who would, aside from Kamala, would take his place? And the answer is totally obvious.
You? Me?
No. I thought I had a doll of her, but I don't.
Nancy Pelosi? She's
no
seeming pretty vigorous. Yeah.
No. Hillary Clinton.
Oh, please.
Give me a break. She's perfectly positioned to
run
in the primaries to succeed Joe Biden.
How old is Hillary? Could we just get to another generation, for God's sake?
I don't know if she's younger than Joe.
All of America is younger than Joe. I'm about to Google her age, and you'll be shocked at how old she is. Should I ask ChatGPT, or do you think I can get this without that?
My guess is she's 76.
Hillary Clinton age. She's 75. Give me a break. Okay. She'd be 81 by the end of the first term. Come on. Cut it out, Mickey. Snap to it.
Anyway, she is completely willing to be an old New Dealer. It's not clear that she was ever on board for the triangulation of the Clinton her husband's administration, and she'd start off with a guaranteed 30% of the vote from her loyal followers.
No. Look, if it's going to be a challenger as opposed to him stepping aside, it's going to have to be somebody who draws a contrast.
No. I'm talking about
leading him to challenge him. His age.
I'm not talking about a challenge. I'm talking about if he should.
Oh God!
Decide not to run.
This is like you are a Trump agent.
Who fills the void, and who would supplant Kamala as the obvious replacement?
You're trying to sabotage the Democratic ticket. You're a Trump agent.
Who's going to stop her, Bob? You know she wants to do it. Who's going to stop her?
You are to the Democratic Party what Joe Biden was to the Nord Stream pipeline, Mickey.
You're changing the subject. The Nord Stream pipeline story is very weird. There's been a flat denial, but there hasn't been the sort of pushback you'd expect if it was bullshit. I guess if it was,
the government said it's complete fiction or something.
We should fill in people what we're talking about.
Yeah. So Seymour Hersh, storied, legendary investigative reporter who uncovered the My Lai massacre and has done other great work.
Also, some other very questionable work.
Well, I don't know about very. Lately, he has, in recent years, he's run afoul of the establishment, I would say. by doing some stuff questioning whether a chemical weapons attack in Syria was a false flag operation, which I think in principle, chemical weapons attacks can be. And what else did he get into? Oh, the thing about the killing of bin Laden, it's not like he denied that they killed him or something. I mean, I didn't think there was anything super crazy there. But anyway, he's come out. Everyone remembers the Nord Stream pipeline blowing up. This is this natural gas pipeline from Russia to Germany. Actually, two of them, Nord Stream 1 and 2. And when it blew up, the Blob and kind of tried to convince us, and MSM virtually in America, that the Russians had did it, which just made no obvious sense. It's like, it's their pipeline. If they want to stop the gas, they can turn off the valve. And that's actually much more effective for them if they want to use the gas as leverage to like coerce Western Europe into breaking ranks with the U.S. on Ukraine policy, which is one thing you might want to do. They're much better off having control over the gas than taking control out of their hands. Who would like to take control out of their hands? The United States. We said so. And Joe Biden said, in fact, in early February of last year, I'm gonna track down the exact quote. He said something like, if Putin invades, there will be no Nord Stream 2, which is one of the two pipelines blown up. Now, he could have just meant they'll never get regulatory approval. But anyway, the U.S., in terms of common sense reasoning, makes much more sense as a culprit. Of course, it could be the U.S. did it and Hirsch's scenario is wrong. But all the U.S. has denied is his particular scenario, which is kind of exotic. He says that under the cover of some naval operation or something, divers planted the bombs several months before they were detonated by remote control. So anyway, this is also Cy Hirsch's Substack debut, and I notice he already has thousands of paid subscribers, so it's working out.
Well, I just think if it were bullshit, if we were not responsible, there would not just be a denial from the CIA. There would be all sorts of experts coming out of the woodwork, talking to Washington Post reporters, saying, this is complete bullshit. Cy Hirsch is off his rocker, and I don't see that. I just see the denial, and as you say, it's a weird denial. It's a work of fiction. Well, that just could be that he fictionalized the divers who supposedly pulled this off. And it also makes sense of this famous tweet from Radek Sikorski, which I'm holding up here where he
was the former prime minister of Poland who, right after this happened, what did he say on that tweet?
He said, "Thank you, USA."
And this is former foreign minister of Poland. Okay, this is not some random guy.
And defense secretary, I think, believes too. So he knows about defense. So
that says, if nothing else, if nothing else, that tells you he thinks it makes sense for the U.S. to do, and it did, because the U.S. Didn't want U.S. to have the leverage over Europe of controlling its natural gas during the winter.
But but that's a pretty ballsy move for Biden to give the go-ahead for what is essentially an act of war.
Yeah, but
and so I don't. It's obviously going to be discovered.
But see, that's where Hirsch's scenario makes particular sense. It's like, if somebody, first of all, this idea originates somewhere in the CIA or something. Some ambitious guy says, "Why don't we do this?" And they say to Biden, "Why don't we do this?" He says, "Oh, I'm not so sure." And they say, "But remember, all we're doing is planting the remote control bombs. You don't have to ever use them. You can use them whenever you want." Okay.
Well, keep in mind, according to Hirsch, he had already sent out an all points bulletin, figure out a way to block this pipeline.
Yeah.
And the CIA came up, somebody came up with this idea of the divers. But go ahead.
Right. My point is, you can see a president committing to this because it's not really committal. The planting of the bombs itself is like, oh, I can always change my mind. And then a few months pass and you decide, well, we really need to do this at this point to make sure Russia has no bargaining power in the winter. But You know, and
they had already invaded Ukraine, but still, we're not a party to that technically.
Wait, say that again.
I think they had already invaded Ukraine by the time we detonated the bombs.
Well, certainly by the time we detonated, by the time we planted them, he invaded Ukraine. In this scenario, we planted them the summer after the February invasion.
Okay.
And then detonated them in September. But I think Hirsch, I haven't read the whole thing, but I think Hirsch is saying the plan originates even before the invasion. But when they say, like, Biden wanted this and that, what they mean is Jake Sullivan or somebody told them Biden wanted it, and we don't know how it was, so whether it was sold to Biden by Sullivan and Blinken, or whether it was his idea or what, you know.
Well, right, but he's clearly a willing. I mean, they're not holding him hostage and moving his hand on the pen. He
had to okay it, but look, with all due respect for his impressive State of the Union performance, yeah, he seems to me like he's in, and some days he's probably pretty malleable.
I mean, do you approve of this?
No.
Sounds like you're okay.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I haven't really thought through whether I approve it. I mean, there's all these weird things, like Victoria Nuland in front of Congress kind of celebrates it. We're glad it happened. Everyone in the administration glad it happened. Of course, she's been a loose cannon forever. I mean, she may be, if she had never entered the scene, it's not clear there would be a war in Ukraine. But so I don't, I
expected you to condemn it for violating the rules-based global order.
Well, I mean, yeah, I condemn it, certainly, if we didn't have Germany's permission, for God's sake. It's a deal. Germany's an ally. It's a deal between them and Russia. I mean, one could say once Russia has invaded a country, violated international law in that way, then you're at war. On the other hand, we're not technically at war with them, even though the story in the Washington Post this week confirmed what everybody knew, which is we basically give them all the targets for at least the rockets we give them. So
we got Germany's permission for this blast? I'm not sure.
No, I'm asking. I'm saying.
I don't think so.
I'm saying it would be pretty perfidious if we stabbed Germany in the back with this. That would seem really bad form. I'd be pretty pissed if I was Germany and we did this without asking.
Who owns the pipeline? It's not like, is it on somebody's sovereign territory? It's in the law of the sea, right?
Russia, and this is another reason to think they didn't do it, is they then set about repairing it. So I guess it's theirs. I don't know, but it, it's like I generally don't go around blowing shit up in my house and then repairing it. If I blow it up, it means I don't want it. And actually, I don't blow up that much stuff in my house, to be honest. But so look, I mean, it makes a lot more sense that the U.S. or U.S. proxy did it than that Russia did it. That was the case before the Cy Hirsch piece. It's the case now. We probably did it. I want to talk about Hirsch more in the Parrot Room. I forgot to set my alarm because I know how long we've been doing this, like 15 minutes?
Something like that, yeah. We're going to be crisp this week, not like the Bloviation Fest last week.
You know what would help our crispness is if somebody would tell us what nutritional supplements Biden took before the State of the Union. If we could get some of those, we'd have the hottest podcast.
I think it was more than nutritional supplements, Bob.
That was a euphemism, Mickey. Nutritional supplements.
Okay. I could use those too. But it's bizarre because why didn't he take them all the time?
I think nutritional supplements
you can only use them once a month or something.
You can't take these all the time, Mickey. Supplements of this magnitude. It's like,
and do they have? But then he was up the next day. He was still
doing
working.
He was probably up all night.
It's a good point. You saw Trump's reaction. Trump's had a hilarious reaction.
What did he say?
He was very complimentary. He said Jill looked lovely, and Biden gave an effective speech, and he was filled with praise for it. It was totally bizarre.
Well, I'll tell you something.
I think he was grooming Jill, Bob.
Don't call him a groomer, Mickey.
Well, that came up. I was transitioning.
Oh, good transition. Let's talk grooming.
Well, Trump also accused Ron DeSantis of grooming. He actually used the word. It's a horrible word. It's used to tar and defame all sorts of people who are probably not doing what grooming implies, and even people like Ryan Girdusky, who was waging a campaign against school boards all over America, says he never uses the word grooming. I don't. So he recognizes that it's a bad word to use. And Trump just accused DeSantis of grooming because there's some blurry photo in which a guy who looks like DeSantis seems to be drinking with a bunch of 17-year-old athletes.
Oh yeah.
And
they're girls. They supposedly were students of his when he taught high school. And
supposedly, if it's him, yeah.
I think it's probably him. It looks like him. He has that terrible haircut he had when he was teaching high school. Have you seen that haircut? That is Oppo research. Is any picture of him when he was teaching? That is like the world's worst haircut.
Is it a mullet?
Oh God, he wishes. It's like Revenge of the Nerds. It's like in Dumb and Dumber. It's like Jim Carrey in Dumb and Dumber. Look up that haircut. That is Ron DeSantis when he's teaching high school. Folks, this can end his campaign right now if we really get this picture out there. I want everybody to do their part. If we work together, we can bring this tragedy to an end.
Anyway, he issued a non-denial denial. DeSantis did.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously not the grooming charge. Obviously, he would deny that, but he just sort of said, I'm the standard thing. I'm spending my time governing, which is the hack.
Yeah. So it is him. He would have denied it.
Right, but the big charge isn't that he's in the photo. The big charge is that he was, drinking with girls who and the teaching of evolutionary psychology, Bob, is that when I say something about just because I'm hanging with a woman and saying nice things about her, does that mean I'm grooming her? Yes, it does. That's what evolution teaches.
That's the teaching of evolutionary psychology?
I think so. So, it's hard. It's a hard one to defend against.
Well, the good news for him is the student of his, who's, and I think she's the one holding the apparent alcoholic beverage, has her arm around him. He doesn't have his arm around her. But it would be better for him if nobody had their arms around anybody in that picture.
Well, it's weird. Mark Halperin went on the commentary podcast. I think I mentioned it last week, and he said, "Well, DeSantis has some personal issues he's going to need to address." And
Mark
didn't talk about
said
it.
that.
Yeah,
that's
so
nerdy.
obviously he was talking about that. Somebody in Trump world told him they were going to use this thing. As personal issues go, I think it's not that devastating, is it? I mean, it's creepy.
If this is the end of it, no. But what if there was some dalliance with a student?
There, but for the grace of God, that's bad. I agree that's bad. Is he married at the time? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. But come on, high school students, not college students, Mickey. High school students.
Isn't there some Matthew Broderick movie that's all about this? No.
And that's the other thing. What was the drinking age? I mean, if his drinking age was 18 at this time, he can say, well, maybe this was a senior and she was legal. But if it's underage drinking that he's participating in as a high school teacher, and I'm a religious conservative Republican voter, I just want to tell you how outraged I am, Mickey.
Okay. It just seems to me that Trump has many more weapons against DeSantis than that. I mean, I'm for DeSantis, although his potential flaws are becoming more and more apparent.
What are they aside from this picture?
Well, he's got to get the Social Security issue behind it. He has to, he did vote for some Republican budget that had a cut in Social Security or maybe even privatization of Social Security. So he's got to kill that now. He can't be defending it. He can't be doing like the Rick Scott thing of saying, well, it just looks like I want to sunset Social Security, but really that's not what he meant. He has to say, I've changed my mind. This is a dead issue. We're not going to cut Social Security. I've come up. He has to completely cauterize it, or else it's going to be a bleeding wound. I told you I looked to see how neocon was his foreign policy record. it's not neocon in the sense that he doesn't have a utopian drive to democratize the entire world, especially the Middle East, but it's pretty pretty Cheney-esque in the Middle East. I mean, he's, with Iran, with Israel, with Syria, there's very little dissent. So that's a potential liability.
I mean, I thought on Syria, he expressed reservations about some form of military action. On the other hand, that was Obama, and it could have been a strictly partisan move. Yeah, right.
That's the problem.
On the other, now some of this, in his defense, I would say, is more or less standard for Florida politics. You got Cuba, got Venezuela, even to some extent Israel in Florida is boilerplate, right?
It was standard. It was standard opportunistic Republican.
What?
It was standard opportunistic Republican foreign policy talk. Yeah.
Speaking of the Jewish vote, I got to quickly say that with friends like Joe Rogan, Ilhan Omar does not need enemies. Did you hear what he said on his podcast?
No.
So last week we talked about this thing where she had said, the thing that got her into trouble and tarred as anti-Semitic was saying it's all about the Benjamins, referring to the way AIPAC influences votes in Congress, which when you think about it is actually not that outrageous thing to say about a political lobby that does in fact channel money to politicians. But so Joe Rogan, Crystal Ball was on his show and the Ilhan Omar thing came up, and here's what he says. He thinks he's defending her, or thinks he's on the same wavelength as her. He says, the idea that Jewish people are not into money is ridiculous. That's like saying Italians aren't into pizza. Okay, Joe, she wasn't saying Jewish people are into money. She was saying the people that AIPAC is giving money to, most of whom aren't Jewish, are into money, okay? He thought it was that's not, and
I'm not even sure it's true.
What, the Jewish people aren't into, Jewish people are into money, or that they're not? I mean, you speak for the Jews, Mickey, as I've always said.
I speak for the Jews, and I live in Beverly Hills, where there are a lot of Jewish people who are into money. But
what is the answer?
As a percentage of the Jewish population, is it a especially materialistic group of people? I'm not so sure. Around here it is, but this is a tiny percentage of the Jewish population.
In fact,
in New York, there are a lot of Jews who spend all day reading the Torah. They don't even have jobs. They're on food stamps.
And in fact, Ilhan Omar was saying Jews are happy to part with money for the sake of a cause they believe in.
No, I'm not. We're not talking about what Ilhan Omar.
I know, but I'm saying she's agreeing with you. She's almost not. She's not just not saying that they're into money. She's almost by implication saying they're not into it, because she's depicting them, at least the ones in AIPAC, as giving it away. Okay, think about that. Think about that.
Good point. Very subtle point.
Thank you.
Very nuanced.
Thank you.
I don't know if you like. I hate nuance.
So Crystal Ball, who got the picture, had to find a way to transition to the actual talking point in defense of Ilhan Omar without saying, Joe Rogan, you're a fucking idiot. You're making this hard, and without seeming to sign on to what he was saying. And she did a pretty good job, I gotta say.
That's why they pay her the big bucks. Anyway, with DeSantis, the third thing that troubles me is, of course, he had this conference where he sort of supported watering down New York Times versus Sullivan to make it easier for public officials to sue the press. I don't think I want to do that, and I think it's sort of awkward to do that at the same time we are screaming free speech against Twitter and big tech, to say you want to sort of restrict it when it comes to the libel laws. I mean, it's not a direct contradiction, but it sits uneasily with that. So those are three areas where I'm beginning to have my doubts about DeSantis. On the other hand, if he's right on immigration, I'll ignore all those things.
Why is he even getting into this free speech thing?
He seems to be running a series of conferences. This was an event that he was at where he establishes his policy bona fides on various issues.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is the First Amendment. One of them is New York Times versus Sullivan, and another one in the future might be immigration, I'm told.
Mm.
So I have high hopes for that, and I'm still pinning all my hopes on him. He is the weapon to get rid of Trump, but he has some weaknesses.
I heard David Korn on a podcast. And first of all, he spent part of the podcast raving about Biden's performance and saying, I've done stand-up comedy. It's tough to handle a heckler. You handle him. But then he said, but I'm not sure that somebody his age should run for president. So even he has doubts. And, quickly, Mickey, what has to happen is several people in the Democratic establishment, possibly including Barack Obama, have to just choose a stalking horse, somebody who's going to break the ice. I recommend Tim Ryan because he's got nothing to lose. He's prominent enough to do it, and he's got nothing to lose because he's not in office. And he could be the guy who says, I'm challenging Joe Biden. And then they have to set it up in advance so that, like, assuming Obama's on board, which he should be if he has the interest of the party at heart, I think. But then he should say, reporters should say to Obama, what do you think of this? And he should say, look, I'm sure Joe welcomes the competition. I think the Democratic Party will be, whoever the candidate is, will be stronger for having had vigorous competition in the primary. Sure. Have a couple of other elders say that. And then it's open season, and maybe even have the more substantial candidate ready to step in. You, me.
Does Obama then said, I support Joe Biden in the primary, or does he say I'm neutral? That would be too vicious. But if he doesn't do that, I don't think he's giving him the necessary support.
Yeah, I think the smarter thing is to probably say, look, I'm a Joe fan, but I'm sure he welcomes the competition. This is good for the party.
Yeah. I don't think Tim Ryan, a proven loser, is the man to do it.
It does. All it takes, you're just getting the Obama quote. Tim is just there for the Obama quote. Okay. It's like somebody who would at least attract attention. And because he's been on the presidential debate stage, he's been in Congress, and he didn't lose by that much to whoever your favorite J.D. Vance.
Yeah, it was a substantial defeat.
He'd work.
6 points, I think, 5 points, something like that.
He'd work.
I guess I don't see him as having the heft of Gene McCarthy, but
again, his job is not to win. His job is to give Obama a chance to say something. Okay.
Right. Well, but Gene McCarthy didn't win the New Hampshire primary, and it did the job. Did you realize that started with a slight from Lyndon Johnson? He was auditioning people to be his vice president in '64, and he wanted to have it as like a Miss America pageant, where he had he narrowed it down to 2 finalists, and McCarthy was going to be the tearful runner-up who lost to Hubert Humphrey, and McCarthy said "fuck this" and was pissed off, and that's one of the motivations for running against Johnson in New Hampshire.
And he got a lot of support, McCarthy. Marty Parrots was a McCarthy fan.
He ran a very dignified campaign. He was a very dignified man who had a lot to say about a lot of things. And the debate with Bobby Kennedy in California is still the best, most substantive debate I've ever seen. Anyway,
I'm getting nostalgic about the caliber of candidates we used to have in olden times, Mickey.
Anyway, you have Hillary, Bob, but Biden has to drop out first before Hillary jumps in. Look, it's either Hillary or Kerry. They're all going to want to jump in.
Kerry Mickey, why do you keep mentioning people who are like 80 years old?
It's a fact. It is a fact that all these people want to be president and will jump in if they have a chance. And if Biden drops out, they will have that chance. I'm not saying it's a great thing. I'm being a pundit. I'm stating it is a fact that it will happen.
All the discussion of Biden's age is making it harder on people of that generation. It's just going to be, it's not going to work. They're not going to step in and say, hey, I'll only be 81 by the end of my term. Joe would be 85 or 86.
Just watch him.
I'm not saying they won't try. It's not going to work.
Okay. Well,
and also, please, Hillary.
Hillary starts off with a substantial chunk of support.
I was thinking, you were saying that there was the word out there was that, well, if they dump Kamala as the next candidate, you have to have a POC woman, and that could be Susan Rice. Susan Rice wouldn't be that bad. I mean, well, no, but I mean, as a candidate, she would handle herself much better than
she'd be an okay vice presidential candidate.
Or presidential candidate compared to Kamala.
Would she be a good president?
Well, she knows foreign policy to to some extent. I don't know. I can think of worse. I think I'd rather have her than Hillary foreign policy.
She's a proven second rater.
Well, you can do worse.
You could have a third rater.
Yeah. And we're just beginning. We could go all day.
I mean, there's
4, 5.
There's Libya. She has that to her credit.
Hillary?
Both Hillary and Susan Rice.
Yeah, well, yeah.
One weird thing was Obama made a big deal of all these little fees at it was sort of small ball. It was sort of very Dick Morrissey. These fees that hotels charge you, and he's going to fight back against the corporations that have, that tack on little extra stupid fees. And one of them was surprise billing. And bizarrely, I have a friend who wanted Trump to endorse stopping surprise billing and succeeded. He did endorse and she claimed this was the killer polling issue. This issue polls incredibly well. People care about it. It's not like some bullshit little issue. So Biden has now hit on it. So don't underestimate the power of those little bullshit surprise billing
bullshit ideas. I'm a fan of those. You want to hear some of mine? Some of my little bullshit
I think
ideas?
we've heard them, but
I want to mention that I was kind of hard on some of Matt Taibbi's earlier Twitter Files threads. Did you read this week's Matt Taibbi Twitter Files thread?
I think I did. I
think it's actually significant, because and I write about this in today's issue of the Nonzero newsletter, The Earthling. But so it's about how subtly the blob can exercise power. So this Hamilton 68 dashboard thing, which was supposedly was this powerful tool for tracking Russian influence online.
Right.
And some people had doubts about it, including some Trump supporters and some people on the far left. But he shows a couple of things. First of all, Yoel Roth, who was then Twitter's chief of safety and trust or whatever, he looked into it and he said, wait a second, this is bullshit. If you look at these people that these accounts, the Twitter accounts that Hamilton 68 is calling bots and Russian, most of them aren't Russian and they're not bots. They're a lot of them are conservatives, Americans with opinions. Some of them were lefty people with opinions, like Joe Luria, the editor of Consortium News. And I would say they tended to be kind of anti-blob and tended not to be Russia hawks. So he was arguing, this is what Taibbi uncovered in the Twitter emails. He was saying, let's just blow the whistle on this Hamilton 68 bullshit. And one person in Twitter fought back and said, no, we can't. We have to be very careful in pushback because, and she mentions this thing called the Alliance for Secure Democracies or something. And it turns out that's this just like a blob central thing. If you look at the board of advisors, it's like Michael McFaul, Bill Kristol. It's run by this guy, or was co-founded by this guy, Jamie Fly, who's a neocon. You've got like Michael Chertoff. You've got all these people who were either at the CIA or Department of Homeland Security or the National Security Agency. So it's just like, this thing is just like blob central. And this woman at Twitter pushes back and says, no, we got to be careful in how we approach these guys. Now, she later goes on to be in Joe Biden's National Security Council. So she is a spokesperson for it, and then left them and went to one of these consulting groups that gets money from the military industrial complex. So she's, kind of blob central herself. And so Twitter never blows the whistle on what bullshit Hamilton 68 is. And the reason really is, it's like fear of the blob, fear of the power of the blob, as Taibbi puts it, fear of how well connected this
I guess I'm a little confused. Was Hamilton 68 actually getting Twitter to take down tweets or to label them as Russian disinformation?
What it was doing was getting a lot of media attention and being used as evidence that, yes, Russians are all over all
why
over.
did Twitter need to wade into this and say, denounce them as wrong? They could. There are a bunch of people. If Twitter wants to be a political player, they could also denounce the Southern Poverty Law Center and a bunch of bullshit organizations.
Well, Hamilton 68 was identifying Twitter accounts. It said it had 600 accounts that were like Russian bots. Now, it was weird. It was kind of like Joe McCarthy's list of like 58 people in the State Department over what is, because they didn't publicize it. They just said, there's these 600 Twitter accounts, apparently. And Twitter looked into it and go, wait a second, these are not bullshit accounts.
Okay, so they're responding to a charge.
Right.
Yeah.
But the other thing I want to say is like Hamilton 68 was part of the process by which people in the resistance, anti-Trump people, came to identify Russia as this existential threat because they identified it as this big pro-Trump, like anti-American liberal thing, okay? Hamilton 68 was part of that. And in that sense, it was part of, and I'm not saying this was all planned out in advance, but as it happens, it was part of paving the way for a lot of anti-Russia sentiment that made it easier for Russia hawks to have their way with American policy. And
did you read? I have two reactions. Did you read the Duncan Campbell piece attacking Katrina vanden Heuvel of The Nation? It's a startling development that the big enemy of the left now is The Nation magazine. Okay, fair enough. But I mean, yeah, Katrina vanden Heuvel was, wanted to recognize. I mean, I must admit, I know her a bit, and I sort of admire her in many ways. But what was your reaction to that?
Yeah, I mean, the piece was so somebody dug up a piece that had been written for Columbia Journalism Review a couple of years ago that Columbia Journalism Review chose not to publish, and I guess that was supposed to be part of the scandal. But if you read the piece, I didn't get all the way through it, but supposedly the scandal is that Katrina vanden Heuvel and some others at The Nation, but not everybody, were skeptics of Russiagate and were kind of recommending against going whole hog on Russiagate. And apparently there were no few staffers who wanted to go whole hog on Russiagate, and some of them did write about it. I mean, Katha Pollitt wrote about it. She was she was on board with Russiagate stuff. And but it seems to me that if anything, the basic position that Katrina vanden Heuvel was taking has been vindicated. I mean, now I said that and caught shit from Marcy Wheeler, and I'm in an ongoing dialogue with her on Twitter about this. And
it does seem to me the jury is still out on Russiagate.
Sure, but
skepticism was vindicated, but
that's what I mean.
It's not clear that the extent of Russian involvement, that we know everything.
No, it's not. But I mean, they did this massive Mueller investigation.
Right. He didn't find it.
Well, he had a lot of resources.
Right.
And I'm just saying, look, there's been no smoking gun. It would be, I don't see how you trot this piece out about The Nation and say, aha, we got him. If there hasn't been a smoking gun, right? I mean, wow, you Russiagate skeptics really, no, you didn't get it wrong. I mean,
the piece did try to make it seem like that vanden Heuvel was sort of carrying water for her husband, Stephen Cohen, and let him dominate The Nation, and then occasionally let a dissenter who believed in Russiagate, state their view.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
look,
the picture he painted.
Steve Cohen was one of the world's leading experts on Russia. Right. So it's not as if he had some kind of nefarious financial connection he was carrying water for. He had ideas. He had ideas about Russia. And I'll tell you, in retrospect, I think if we had listened to him, he was raising questions back in 2014 about Russia and Ukraine and saying, look, we need to come up with a creative solution to the problem with the EU and Ukraine, because this is obviously going to be considered very threatening to Russia. Right. I think we should have listened to people like him.
Right. I definitely agree with that. I have a fact about Duncan Campbell, who that only listeners to this podcast will know about, I think.
Okay.
He was a very nice guy. He lived around here in LA. I don't know where he lives now. Distinguished journalist. Who was his girlfriend?
Well, the ironic answer, of course, would be Katrina vanden Heuvel, but it's not that. What is the answer?
Jacqueline Bisset.
Really?
Yes. So
my hat's off.
Don't worry about him.
Wait, I don't know this guy. How old is he?
He's pretty old. If he were running for president, you would say he's too old.
Uh-huh.
Let me put it that way. A man of a certain age.
Well,
maybe even older than me.
He wrote the piece that CJR spiked. Is that it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
He's a veteran British journalist. Totally.
Well, I can see how when he wrote it,
man of the left.
I can see how when he wrote the piece, it would have seemed stronger because it wasn't yet so clear that we were going to go so long without finding a smoking gun.
But he just republished it now.
Right.
So,
but I don't get the triumphalism.
You don't get the what?
I don't get the triumphalism about publishing it now.
Right. Well, I guess he wrote a piece and he wants to see it published. Damn it!
Yeah.
So, that would be the triumphalism. The other thing is there are all these other. It's not just Hamlet 68. There are a bunch of organizations that are using the concept of disinformation to basically destroy the right. I mean, there's one that's sort of going around that Quinn Hillier wrote about this week and was in the the Washington Examiner, I believe, maybe the Times. I get those two confused. That's using it goes around to advertise and say, you don't want to fund this advertising this magazine that's printing disinformation, and like some sort of mild opinion on gender affirming medical care or something will count as disinformation. And they're basically like wreaking havoc with right-wing magazines that costing them millions and millions of dollars, and only recently exposed. The other thing is an interesting the explanation for why the algorithm seemed biased against the right is not that it was inherently biased against the right. It's they were left-wing organizations that were basically automating reports of disinformation against virtually every right-wing Twitter account in the world.
You mean they were reporting them to Twitter? It was like
reported to Twitter
were bots sort of that reported right-wing accounts.
A mass computerized way. And once they were reported, then the algorithm starts discriminating against them. But it wasn't anything Twitter itself had engineered. It was a sort of attack from the left trying to report every right-wing account there is.
As I said, Yoel Roth, who is himself a man of the left, was pointing out that these accounts being identified as Russian bots were by and large conservative human beings, and he was against, and he wanted to blow the whistle. I think he was a guy who acted in good faith.
Under this theory, he failed to blow the whistle against the disinformation attacks. Not they weren't accusing accounts like I don't know they weren't accusing accounts of being Russian. They were just saying it's disinformation.
But
and
what
it's
I
automated,
mean is,
so anybody can file a report, right?
Right. Now, what I mean is, it's a very hard job. My sense is that he actually did his best to act in good faith and be a neutral arbiter, but it's an extremely hard job. In any event, in this one case, I think he did the right thing and was shouted down by a defender of the Blob.
Right. One thing what weird thing in the State of the Union that I'd like your opinion on is Biden had this weird line which said, would anybody in the world, any world leader change places with Xi in China? And he repeated it in his yelling voice. Not one. Would anyone? Name one. Name me one.
That was what was funny. I'd heard such good reviews of the speech, and then I happened to watch that clip, and I thought, this guy seems deranged. I mean, it was really overboard.
It was overboard, and what he was, whatever chemical he was taking was overdoing it. But what was the point of that line? I mean, I don't understand that line. And there are dozens of world leaders who would change places with Xi. He's in charge of the up and coming. Is it the largest economy in the world? If it's not, it's going to be soon.
I know a podcaster who would trade places with him in a heartbeat.
Make that one.
You wouldn't? You wouldn't? I think there's a lot of perks to
No.
that job. My alarm is going off.
Could
That
I bring
means
democracy to China?
what?
If I trade places with them, could I bring democracy to China? I think I'd be killed if I did that. Right?
Yeah, well, I would just stick with the perks. If I had the job, I think I would revel in the perks for a few years before I got ambitious. But
I
listen,
mean, they call him Winnie the Pooh. What would they call me? Jesus.
do they call him Winnie the Pooh?
She, yes.
Who calls him that?
Chinese people, and he gets really upset about it and like bans images of Winnie the Pooh from the internet.
Is all this
Yes.
true?
Yes.
Why do they call him Winnie the Pooh? Is it
Because he looks like Winnie the
panda-related?
Pooh.
He doesn't look like Winnie the Pooh.
Well, looks more like Winnie the Pooh than you do.
Well, okay. I concede the point.
It was
So
false, and was it some sort of threat? I mean, I don't. Was it?
I didn't get it. Well, I mean, he
it.
was. I guess it was like maybe the subtext was, "You think he's winning? He's not winning." Also,
Right,
he
we've
was
rocked
winning.
him
There are
back on
people
his
who
heels,
trade
yeah.
places with me, but not with him.
I guess that's what he's saying. If somebody told it to him, and it like rang. It's like it was like a line that somebody told him that resonated with him, and he. But why was it? Why did it survive all the vetting to?
Well, the line would have been not that bad, but he was just too amped up.
Well, he's always amped up. He always does that. That's a standard thing where he repeats himself at overamped volume.
Yeah, what's her name? What's the woman whose last name is Hemingway on the right? What's her first name?
Molly Hemingway.
Molly Hemingway. She called it speed slurring. I was reading some Twitter during the State of the Union, even though I didn't watch it. Now is the term.
But he doesn't slur when he repeats it.
No, but I know what she means. It's like, you know what I mean. It's like he rushes through things to show his vigor, but he still can't do the enunciation because enunciation slows down with age. It starts
But this
early.
repetition thing is like how he proves that he's smart. It's like, you think this is a banal thought? Well, I'm going to repeat the banal thought at top volume. Take that, Ivy Leaguers.
Who wouldn't trade places with my banal thought?
So I don't know. I think my mullet analogy is much better than Molly.
No,
Hemingway.
I'm still just admiring that.
So I had one thing to say about the balloon. Should we save it for the Parrot Room?
I mean,
Maybe not.
I want to say a couple of things about Ukraine, but go ahead.
Well, the balloon thing is just, it seems to be the question of, did she know about it? And was this an intentional attempt to sabotage the rapprochement with Tony Blinken that they were planning? Is sort of an interesting point.
Well, although we're now starting to say that there's a lot of these Chinese balloons floating around, which makes it more plausible that this one, that they didn't plan this, and maybe it wasn't supposed to be so visible, or wasn't even supposed to be over American airspace. I don't know, but I just
they were supposed to be over Canadian airspace. I mean, who are they? We're the people who were underneath the North Pole. By the way, we shot something down as we go to tape this.
Oh, did we shoot
the Defense
another
Department
balloon down?
shot something down over Alaska.
Another balloon?
It didn't say what it was.
So it could just be like a bird.
I don't think if it was a bird. I don't think, and I don't think they would make it a big news story. And the other thing about it is why did we have to blast it with a Sidewinder missile? Couldn't we just have thrown a harpoon at it? Yeah.
Why didn't the pilot just open the window and use a BB gun?
I tend to think everything is political with Biden, and this was an attempt to be macho after having dithered as this thing sailed across the United States. He wanted the most macho ending for it that he could.
Oh, I would imagine they left that call up to the Air Force. But these planes still do have machine guns, don't they? My understanding about balloons is that about 100 shots from a 50 caliber machine gun or whatever caliber they are might impair their functionality. But I don't know. Who knows?
Why couldn't they just send a Warthog up with a Gatling gun and knocked it down? I mean,
I would have gone with Gatling gun.
But the other question is, I was charging that they should have shot it down over land. It would have been easier to recover the things. Now they're at the bottom of the ocean, but they claim to have now discovered the key components at the bottom of the ocean as we go to tape. So I could be wrong.
Yeah.
So you don't think they want? I mean, there was this narrow window for a rapprochement, and it's been shot down now.
Well, for the time being, I mean, there's no reason it should be. I mean, come on, folks. I mean, it's like we spy on each other. They got caught. It's not as if this is some inherently illicit form of spying. I mean, we invented this. It was our U-2 over the Soviet Union, over flights that were supposed to be secret, taking pictures, and it got shot down in the 50s. So it's not like we can claim this is some radical, new, and unacceptable thing.
But it's obviously only temporarily postpones the rapprochement, but it does postpone it enough to maybe get through this window before the election when rapprochement is possible.
I mean, the thing I've learned since last week is that, as was widely reported, apparently it wasn't just taking pictures, it was also intercepting communications. I would think anything really secret would be encrypted. So it's not like, they're getting Pentagon stuff, but.
According to something I wrote, it's all about the battle for dominance of near space. In other words, planes can't go above how many feet, but balloons can go up to almost to the edge of space. So if you want to dominate that layer of the Earth's atmosphere, you want to master balloons.
Well, I know one balloon they're no longer mastering, Mickey.
Okay. God's the issue. Anyway, we have a whole bunch of other stuff to talk about. I don't know.
Quickly on Ukraine, just so we can talk more in the Parrot Room. But basically, the situation I described last week remains the case, which is to say, there's nowhere where Ukraine seems to be making progress, and there are places where Russia seems to be making progress. It seems, at this point, at last check, Bakhmut, there was only one road into Bakhmut. You would think Ukraine would withdraw before long, and I hope it's not too late when they decide to. As far as I know, they haven't. I didn't check Twitter right before this, but they haven't started yet. And who knows? Maybe they'll miraculously reverse the tide. But there, Crimea, there's a few places where, however incrementally, the Russians are gaining ground. Nowhere where Ukraine is. Ukraine has, I think, so far fought off the offensive in Vuhledar in the south, which matters. But more and more people are growing concerned about the fact that Russia has manpower, quantity of manpower on its side. And one thing you're seeing, and I see this on pro-Russia Twitter, but I think I try to follow people on pro-Russia Twitter who, some of them may be flat out propagandists, but I think they generally use authentic source material. But you see these videos of Ukrainian police or soldiers or something, like tracking down these guys who have been evading the draft and putting them in trucks and stuff. I mean, they've definitely, and I think some of this happens in Russia too. Apparently, in both of these places, because of the whole legacy of the Soviet Union, the deal about getting a legal summons is you kind of don't have to take it that seriously. It's just they have to come get you or something. So it's not like this is that aberrant. But I do think Ukraine has exhausted the supply of people who really are very eager to fight this war. The other thing I saw in a couple of places, again, it's on pro-Russia Twitter, but is that they have lowered the age from 17 to 16 for the people they're conscripting. Now, that would be a sign, I think, of true desperation, if true.
When do these tanks arrive?
Oh, the tanks, it's going to be months and months before they have an impact. I was hearing this Michael Kaufman guy saying, honestly, the other kinds of armored vehicles are probably more important than the tanks. The infantry fighting vehicles and armored personnel carriers. And nobody seems to think they're going to actually be the miracle cure. I mean, if you ask, what Ukraine most needs now, it's probably more things like conventional artillery shells, drones. I mean, I will, if you want to have hope of reversing this kind of modest Russian tide, weapons, I do think there are kinds of weapon systems that in quantity could make a big difference. Do you remember all the stuff about the Switchblades, kamikaze drones? This is like 8 months ago. People were excited. Oh, these Switchblade drones. And I was like, just last week, I thought, like, whatever happened to these Switchblade drones? Well, I Google it, and the Switchblade 600 drone, which is the one that can destroy tanks, which on paper, it's like great, right? It's like it's a kamikaze drone. It can go like 40 miles, and there's a camera on it, so you can change course in mid-sight. You can, it's remote control. You just pick the tank, boom, it's gone. As of, so I Googled it, came up with a story from November where the company still had not delivered any, and were saying within weeks, they hope to deliver 10. And I'm not sure if that's 10 actual drones or 10 kits, each of which has several drones. But I mean, that's the kind of thing. So that still had not, so far as I know, that hasn't even hit the battlefield, certainly hasn't in quantity. That's the kind of thing that maybe a bunch of them could make a big difference. The company claims in principle it can make 2,000 a year. Who knows? But anyway.
Well, it is weird that the woods aren't going to be filled with Republican hawks who are claiming that Biden should produce the drones faster and deliver more of them. The Republicans seem solidly skeptical of the war.
Yeah, that does seem where they are, and that is a turnabout that I think the Democrats still haven't entirely adjusted to. They still think that they have to spend all their time defending their manhood. But what Zelensky is focusing on, by the way, is fighter jets, and he's doing it big time. He's making a big deal of it, and I don't totally get that, because it would be a long time before those had much impact, and it seems like they have near-term challenges. But yeah. I don't
know. Maybe then we'll give them the pilots with the fighter jets.
Well, I think, as I said last week, I think that may be part of the appeal to him, is the various senses in which the fighter jets could lead to
entangle us.
Yes, could entangle us.
Are there maybe some Ukrainian Americans who know how to pilot fighter jets, and we could have like a core of, Ukrainian Americans where we wouldn't get involved, but they could go and pilot the jets for them?
Does Vindman know how to fly a plane?
Mrs. Vindman, maybe.
He's the only one I can think of. There are apparently a non-trivial number of Polish troops who are mercenaries, technically. And so far as I know, they didn't come from the Polish armed forces. But there's actually a fair number of non-Ukrainians who have fought and died over there. I think a lot of Poles.
So, and yeah. Poland was one of the countries that was supposed to wimp out in the face of Putin's authoritarianism, right? Because they were Putin-ish authoritarians themselves. They've done exactly the opposite.
There's long-standing. Yeah. No, they're you might say Russia skeptics. I mean, I think they're more on Ukraine's side now. In the absence of their common Russian enemy, there are historical tensions between Poland and Ukraine, but I think they're more on board with fighting Russia than a lot of European countries, which isn't to say they want to be drawn into it. I don't think they do, but it's Big Brzezinski, biggest Cold Warrior ever, just about.
I await the column in the Bulwark extolling the illiberal democracy of Poland for standing up to Putin.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon.
May not.
We're at the time when we want to hype our.
Yeah. So we're going to patreon.com/Parrot Room now, where we will discuss, for example, Mickey.
Well, there's this weird story from Naftali Bennett, the former prime minister of Israel, saying that the West pulled the plug on a promising peace deal, a 50-50 peace deal. With Putin before the war started.
It wasn't before the war. It was
what he said, and
it was 10 days into the war.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I have a harmonic convergence of Bob that I want to propose, where I can knit together two aspects of your thoughts.
I'm on board.
In a way you've probably thought of, but maybe not. I have an extended attack on Jonathan Chait, which I'm ready to do anytime.
I will defend him, whatever you say about him.
And I wanted to debate. I know you love talking about social equality versus income equality, but I have
Can't get enough.
in addition, we made some progress last week, and I'm thinking
We did actually.
I have an additional wrinkle to add.
I have
to
an
that.
additional wrinkle for you.
Okay, we can wrinkle each other.
Yeah,
as
if either of us needs it. Oh, I've got for you. This is, it's almost tempting to do this in public. No, I'll do it in the Parrot Room. A great anti-semaphore talking point. They hired a very dubious character to maybe run their foreign policy stuff. I don't know. We'll get into this. It's a hire that you should, given your longstanding vendetta against Semaphore and Ben Smith, you should really weaponize this shit, man.
Okay. You use the word weaponize, Bob. That means you're going to have to pay a punishment too.
Why? Is that bad?
It's not as bad as Nothing Burger, but it's pretty bad. Yeah.
You mean on grounds of triteness? It's a cliche?
Yes. Correct.
Okay. Well, let me just say
it's a boot stamping on the human face. A cliche.
Okay. Well, anyway, I'm going to deliver up a weapon burger for you, Mickey. You're going to like this.
That's and everybody and people are murdering city councilmen in your neighborhood, Bob.
And not my immediate neighborhood, but in two different New Jersey towns.
But you're the expert on local government New Jersey murders.
Yeah.
So I thought you could solve this mystery for us.
I can talk a little about it. Did you watch The Long Goodbye, the movie featuring Elliot Gould, whom you supposedly...
I watched 2/3 of it.
Okay, then we can discuss that. It was recommended that we watch it. We'll discuss that. I want to talk a little more about AI. Microsoft Bing is getting good reviews, notwithstanding, the AI integration into Microsoft Bing, the ChatGPT integration is getting good reviews, even though last week on this very podcast, I predicted that Microsoft would not do a good job of turning ChatGPT.
If you ask it to write a poem praising Charles Murray, it will refuse.
Is that right?
Yes. That was unbelievable.
That's what we call guardrails. Guardrails in the AI business. What else?
I bet it will write a poem about you. It's ridiculous. It's absurd.
Well, they're erring on the side of caution.
Well, when they came for Charles Murray, we said it was.
I said nothing.
Yeah, you're not that far from Charles Murray.
Are you kidding? You're not that far from Charles Murray.
I'm closer than you are, but you're
right. So when they came for Charles Murray,
your former editor of the magazine that hyped his bell curve, and you have proven anti-feminist views about our evolutionary nature.
I do not have I was acting editor of the magazine, not when it ran the Charles Murray shit. Andrew Sullivan was, and I ran a piece, a counter piece, arguing against Charles Murray at that very moment.
ChatGPT will kill you last.
Yeah, I mean, first they came for Charles Murray. I said nothing. Next they'll come from you. I'll say nothing. And they'll have to go to several people before they come for me.
Okay, you're safe.
I am speaking up.
You have some breathing room.
Yeah. What else? Wait, was there one more thing? A little more quantum physics. Actually, I've been quantum physics. Burt Bacharach died. We might as well Google a list of his songs and pass judgment on them.
There was that weird. You're very good at explaining weird, unwieldy physics concepts. So, can I ask you about Feynman's integral? Which
not unless I ask ChatGPT about it first.
Okay, it's this weird thing that explains the entire universe.
I can say things about Feynman. I met Richard Feynman. I met him in person, and I talked to him over the phone also.
Yeah, I met Burt Bacharach. I can tell you about that.
Oh, well, there you go. Perfect symmetry, as they say in physics. Okay.
Sums it all up.
Patreon.com/Parrot Room. If you want to see, the Parrot Room, or if you just want to give us money, which is totally fine. We're okay with that, right?
Okay. Raindrops are falling on my head.
And if people can spot the incorrect word in this in the lyric, Mickey, isn't it raindrops Oh, I thought his raindrops keep. Never mind. Maybe you're right. I humbly withdraw from the field of battle. And we'll see you in the parrot room.
Okay.